we're very excited about spring ball and the new coaches. There's been a lot of talk about our football program right now, and so I'm looking forward to getting out there. This is the fun time of year for us. We get a chance to coach and be with the players, and so many returning guys. Gavin just gave me a roster so I'd remember who they were. But you guys had a chance to visit with some of our new coaches, and they're really good people, good quality coaches, got good personalities. Want to give you guys a chance to visit with them a little bit. But just looking forward to getting out there today. We get 3 practices this week, and everybody's on spring break, and then come back and go 3 days a week for the next 4 weeks and have a spring game. I think it's April 18th at 1 o'clock. So I'm excited about today. We handed out a roster. Did we hand it out or not? Okay, we have a roster that'll update you guys on our current members that are active, like some players that won't be with us in the spring, and some players that are injured, and so we'll give you the latest and greatest information. Daxx Garman, everybody want to know about him. I think he's going to. In fact, I know he's going to transfer. I just don't know where. I don't have that information, but he wanted an opportunity to go somewhere. He's going to graduate this May. Give himself a chance to be a starter. And I've said this before, but I really want to thank him for what he's done for Oklahoma State football. And I think somebody's going to get a good player. He's certainly didn't have every opportunity here for success, but gave us great effort, and really appreciate what he did for Oklahoma State football. But other than that, there'll be a few guys on there that aren't here anymore for whatever reason. Not really a lot to look into or go into any depth on, but we have an updated roster, so you guys will know where we'll be this spring.
Coach, what do you want to see from Mason Rudolph this spring?
Just continued leadership, development. He's got a lot to learn. We want him to have the ball in the right spot at all the times, depending on what defense we're seeing, and be able to get the ball to the players that can make the plays. He's done a lot with his body. I think I say 12 to 15. I don't want to say too much, but I thought somebody said yesterday he was at about almost 240 pounds now, 235 pounds. So he's really developed and grown. And his temperament, his attitude, all those things have been really good. So he just needs to continue to progress and understand to take what the defense gives him and get the ball in the hands of guys that can make plays.
You get the ball in the right spots at the right time. Those last 3 games, he quarterback. How often did he do that in those 3 games?
He did it from the public's perception, great. From my perception, average. But we went through a period there, Barry, that we were not very good, and so anything that was decent looked pretty good. For being a true freshman in that circumstance, those circumstances, where we played, who we were playing, it was pretty good. But for what direction we're going in the future, he needs to improve in a lot of areas, and he knows that. But we got a lot out of him those last 3 games. Toughness, some leadership, and a little bit of grit, really, more so than anything.
He had obviously some good moments late last year. The year before, there were some quarterbacks in the league that were freshmen that had good moments too, and came back and struggled for whatever reason. What's the key for him to build on last year and not take a step back or have that sophomore slump?
Yeah, a little bit about what I talked about earlier is understanding our offense and being able to delegate the ball to the people who can make plays, and not doing too much. I think sometimes quarterbacks try to do too much. Well, we see it in every sport. Guys that are struggling at the plate try to make too many plays instead of just taking what pitches they get. Same thing in basketball. Got to dish the ball to the guy that's open. You can't try to do too much if they're getting double teamed. Same thing in football. If they're taking away the throw, Brandon Whedon and Zach Robinson did a great job of saying, okay, we're going to run the football. And as he grows in that area, I think we'll be a better football team.
Might sound like a silly question, but how important is it to have the numbers to actually go through and have a spring game? And what is it?
Well, and it's certainly not, but it's encouraging for us and for me, for the staff, because you want to be as competitive and as physical as you can in the spring, but you also have to be smart. And we went through a time a year ago when we lost really 33 players, and so it was difficult to practice at the tempo and the pace that we wanted to. In all positions other than the offensive line, I'm really comfortable with our football team. We're better, and we have more depth now than we had in the offensive line, but we're still not where we need to be a year from now. But knock on wood, it should give us a chance to be really physical, up-tempo in the spring, and we would love to divide teams up and play a spring game. And that's why we've scheduled it. Unless we got in a situation where we couldn't really divide them up and play, and it wouldn't be something the fans would enjoy. But other than that, we've got some depth at positions that we haven't had really in the last 2 years.
One of those positions seems to be offensive line. Last year, you were trying a bunch of different combinations up front to try to make it work. Well, a bunch of guys coming back. You got some experienced players coming in. What does that do for your entire offense, and then for Mason, having that continuity in front of him?
And I'd mentioned Daxx earlier that in the middle part of the season, when we had moved 2 or 3 guys around and we were inexperienced, we just weren't very good. And so there's a frustration level that builds in for everybody. It starts with me, and then it kind of bled into the quarterbacks and our team in general, because there wasn't really an answer at that time. So we don't have a lot of depth, but we have a little bit more experience at that position. And then when the guys roll in here in the fall, we'll have a little more depth. And then at this time next year, we should be back up to where we were a few years ago. But you just put yourself in the quarterback's position. When you're sitting back there at 7.5 to 8 yards deep, and you feel comfortable with the guys up front that for the majority of the time they can protect you, you're going to function differently than if you feel like that it's going to collapse and you're going to get hit and the offense can't really run.
How do you see JW's role, and how do you see him sort of approaching what that might be?
Well, as you guys know, he's awesome. He's out here in the off season, February workouts. He's just like he was from the day he walked onto campus. And he's going to get that percentage of reps in the spring that a backup would get, and then we'll have a package for him of things that we think he can do to help us that Mason really is not built for 2 reasons. 1, because we don't want him to, and 2, because that's just not something he brings to the table. But Mason is our starter. JW will get those backup reps, but then there'll also be a package that he can give us that we think helps us next season.
Mike Yursich mentioned that out here, that it is such a good thing for those 2, but especially for the entire offense and the entire team, that Mason and JW have such a strong relationship. And it started with Mason playing and JW picking up the baton and saying, I'm going to help this guy be good.
We've been lucky here the last 3 or 4 years as quarterbacks roll in and out, and I think you're seeing that more in college football and in this league, where there's different players that have a chance to play on game day. It's considerably different than it was 5 years ago. And so they have to have a good relationship. And sometimes it benefits us as a team, and then sometimes you have a young man that really doesn't buy in. And so it makes it more difficult for us to have success. But they get along good, very supportive at home. Their families, and that makes it easier for us. So we're very fortunate. And, we have Kolar and then Todd Mays, who will get some of those third-team reps doing some different things on offense. And then, a couple other guys that are walk-ons that have done a good job in our program that'll also get some quality work in the spring.
Mike, how do you feel about the possibility that Ricky Childs could, really kind of strengthen his position in the running back group, and maybe, give himself a better status there?
Bill, we've talked to Rennie and had a conversation that I don't mind sharing with you, that now is his opportunity to establish himself in that role. And he has to make that choice. We've been very fortunate here for a number of years that we've had guys step up and make plays. We went through a lull again here, games 5 through 10, where Dez Rowland, who'd been good for us, was having some issues for a variety of reasons, and so we were very average. But then once he came around later in the year, he kind of solidified the position we've had here for the last 6 or 8 years. And Rennie has a choice now to step up, and he's got to make those plays. We have to trust him to carry the ball 20 times a game. He has to be physical. He has to be reliable. And he's going to have every opportunity to take that. And so, I don't know what else you could ask for.
Right. Bragging on signing day about Carson, and bragging about Jeff Carr, but it's not going to bother you at all. Reddy Childs blows the top off of it, right? And has a great spring.
The times that we've been really good here on offense, we've had multiple backs make a lot of plays for us. Just recently, when Joseph Randall and Kendall were in the backfield, both of them had great success, and Joseph came back and was a 1,000-yard rusher and an all-league player, and Kendall went on and, his 4th-round pick or whatever round he was at San Francisco. And that's really what we need to happen for our football team, because we want 80 football plays in a game. We want 40 passes and we want 40 runs, and we don't feel like that one guy can carry the ball 30 times in a game. We need a guy that can carry the ball 20 and a couple other guys that can carry it 10 and 10 or 15 and 5 or 7, whatever. And that's really what we're looking for. But Chris is not here right now. We're excited about what he brings to the table. Jeff is not here right now. Sione's coming off of an injury, okay? Raymond's working his way into the depth chart. So Rennie has every opportunity now to say, I'm going to be the guy that gets it done.
Is Mays going to be a quarterback full-time, or is he going to move him around?
He's going to start out at running back. So if on the depth chart, Kevin and Gavin did a good job here. They got him at running back. That's where he's going to be. And then there's times he'll play quarterback for us.
Any position switches or maybe kind of experimenting with anything during the spring?
Not that I know of. No. Everybody's in where the depth chart that we have, or the roster, is pretty accurate.
There were moments where Blake Jarwin had, big catch, big play after the catch. And then Seaton in the Bedlam game was open in the middle of the field. You made nice plays with him. Do you expect that they'll be a bigger part of the passing game this year?
Sure, and I'm glad you brought Seaton up. Seaton will limit his reps in the spring because we have a number of young fullbacks and tight ends that we want to get a lot of work. Seaton's a veteran guy that's been around. He's going to play both positions for us, but he'll get just a limited reps in the spring, and these young guys will get a lot of work. But Jarwin is really doing well. Is physically, he had a great off season, and he should be able to play an attached tight end for us. He should be able to play a fullback for us, and he should be able to play a detached wide receiver for us.
Bill mentioned Rennie, and I know it's not something you publish, but the talk around was that he really increased his speed in the offseason when he was clocked. And Doolittle is another guy that ran really well. And I know you lost maybe one of the fastest players in all of college football, but has your team speed increased?
It could. They get so much better now, Robert, with Coach Glass, and I hate to keep bragging on him, but he does such an amazing job with them that you really want to see him play fast. And we've all seen players that run really well, and then there's some players that run well and they carry their pads and play well in games. And so that's what we're looking for. But when we've gone through the off season in February, and I've watched the players, and this is a very physically developed, fast football team. We'll find out how good they are, but they're very impressive when you watch them in the off season.
Mike, as the new assistants came in and talked about sort of how they felt like they all ended up here. There were some interesting connections of guys in the business that may have been the conduit. Maybe it's always been that way, I don't know, but was it fun? Is it interesting for you to try to make the puzzle work when you go out to try to find guys like you had to this time around?
It was very difficult, to be honest with you, Jenny, this time. Several things. First off is that all of us in this profession are overpaid, and it creates an issue. Some coaches have multi-year deals, and it's trickling from head coaches down to assistant coaches. Guys are making a lot of money. Sometimes they're a little bit out of the budget for what Oklahoma State can justify somewhat. And then we have a staff on hand that's done a great job, a lot of guys that have been here for years. And so to be completely honest with you, you hate to bring guys in and really overpay them compared to the loyalty that you have on your staff. And then for the first time, really for me, I've had to deal with a little bit of the NFL contract, and that's very foreign to me. So as I mentioned in the release, it took several weeks. Mike Holder was very instrumental in playing a partner with me and helping. And kind of like everybody else in the state, I guess I kind of jump on the Thunder bandwagon there for a while. I felt like Sam Presti, trying to get everything in check and getting the right people here and meeting the budget and all that. But it was an interesting process this time, and then Jamal Singleton got offered the special teams coordinator and running back position right at the end, and so that threw me a little bit of a curveball because you really try to match personnel, staff alignment with the personality that fits your staff, and so I was kind of in a different situation there right at the end. But I'm really excited about the guys that we hired. I think they can bring a lot. And really the three on offense have gotten a lot of the attention, but Dan brings a lot to us defensively, a lot of maturity, a lot of experience. And so it took a number of weeks to accomplish, but it was certainly an interesting concept. And as I said, and I really meant it, I couldn't have done it without Coach Holder because he really had to bend over backwards and make some things work, so it worked out good for our organization.
Guys you have, it's such an interesting mix of ages, experience. Right. You talk about the NFL, you've got smaller school guys involved. Was that just happen, or when you go out and I've got so many spots to fill, are you thinking we kind of want to try to hit on a lot of different notes with these guys?
Well, we have a pretty good idea of what we're looking for, and then I involve some of the other staff and get their opinions, and then you have to look at who's actually out there and what's available. And can you actually facilitate it financially and what they're looking for personally as an assistant coach? Because years ago for me, I don't know how it is for other head coaches, but assistant coaches would pursue jobs for a reason. Now assistant coaches pursue jobs for potentially what they think their goal is. So you kind of tread water in a lot of different areas. But how we ended up with two guys that came out of the NFL wasn't by design. It just ended up that they were the ones that we thought and I thought were the best on the market that could bring a lot to our offense and give input. And then on defense, Dan was out there and was a really good fit because he had Texas ties, brought some maturity, some experience that we thought could help us on game day on the defensive side of the ball.
How many applicants do you get? You have 4 staff openings. How many people apply for those jobs?
A lot. And honestly, that's why I changed my cell number. And I don't do it for any other reason that I don't know how people get that information.
Hundreds of guys. Hundreds of people apply for these jobs.
I mean, it could be close to 100. I don't know about hundreds, but it could be close to 100.
As busy as you are, does somebody kind of filter? Is there a filter? You personally check them all.
For 2 reasons. One, because I try to protect the information of people that are showing interest in our job, because the majority of them have other employment, and so I try to protect them, and then ultimately I have to make the decision, so I process all that information myself.
And this is the second time in 3 years you've had 4 staff changes, and that's why it's the least favorite part of your job.
It is. It really is, because it happens at a difficult time of the year in recruiting when there's a lot of brain cells that are burned going different directions. And you're also trying to facilitate the staff and make good decisions, not only for our concept, but also our players that are on the team. You try to find a guy that best fits their personality to make everybody function as one. So maybe it's easier for other head coaches, but for me it's a time-consuming process, and it's part of the job. I signed up for it, but it's not one of my favorite things.
Just curious, is Coach Atkins, did he share his story about that week in Buffalo with the 72-inch snowstorm where he stayed at the office the entire week before they went to
He started to, and I said, I don't want to hear about any excuses. when you signed up at Buffalo, you knew what you were getting into.
And Coach Adkins know each other all? Because I know he's been around the SEC. How did you sort of find that he was the right fit with a guy that you didn't really know very well?
I just start running some traps and talking to people, and I know I have a good idea of what I'm looking for personality-wise, experience-wise, so on and so forth. And 2 or 3 people started talking about different guys, and I go that direction. Then I got off in this direction and that direction, and ended up in that direction. And then know people that have coached with or know them, and then I make a phone call, and it kind of all ties together. It's really a long process. I mean, I have a meeting at 1:30. I have no chance of getting it all out before then, but it's an interesting concept of how it works. I mean, you just kind of go out there and you just head in one direction.
Specifically with him, he's the 3rd offensive line coach you've had in 3 years, and you kind of feel like you have to get it right for your players to be attached. So.
And that's all part of it. One guy goes to Texas, the other guy goes to USC, and if the Green Bay Packers call, he may go to the Green Bay Packers, and then we're off on another one. But if you have the right guys, then there's always going to be other employers that are going to pursue them. That's what I found out. But you got to go find another guy and keep moving. Would we like to have them all here for at least 3 or 4 years at a time? Sure, but the market doesn't allow that to happen anymore. It's different than it ever has been, and so we do the best we can.
Mike, what about those analyst spots you filled with Daryl and Bill, bringing them back after they were here before?
Very lucky to get Bill and Daryl, and they can provide a lot of information for us. They both have a lot of experience and knowledge and in this part of the country, and a lot of different things that we do, concepts, and they've been in staff meetings with head coaches that have had a lot of success, and so they can help me. But they can study the game. They know a lot about the game, and they can give information to our coaches on both sides of the ball, and also give information to me and help us during the week. And so I'm just excited about having here, and I think they really help Oklahoma State football.
Part of their job is advanced scouting. Like advanced scouting, how much of a part of their job is that? Like getting started on teams down the road for when you get to Sunday, they've already been looking at future opponents.
Sure. Oh, more than half of it. Yeah. Sure.
We play catch up in that role with other teams, and
I think this league is. Yeah. I think we're playing catch up when it comes to that.
No, that was kind of what I was going to ask. It seems like that analysis or whatever role we want to, or title we want to put on it, seems like that's becoming more and more a thing.
I mentioned it on an interview, a radio interview, and some of you guys grabbed it, but you see it in the NFL, and I don't want to bore you with it, but, when I see NFL games, which is not very often, you see some young guy that's 28 years old and flashes up, he's the offensive coordinator at some – well, he got there in most cases because they hired him in a role and he worked his way up. And eventually I think college football will be the same way. We're following the NFL if you just look at it. You look at the money, you look at the salaries, you look at the television contracts, you look at the way people schedule, all the coverage, the media, the college football playoff system. We're just following the NFL. And so that's eventually what's going to happen, in my opinion. So we're lucky to have those two guys. And anytime you can get that much experience and knowledge on your football staff, it can only help us in the long run.
Familiarity a factor? Was that something you were looking for too? You know these guys and have history with them?
And I had asked Glenn and them to come up with some names of coaches they would be comfortable with. And then obviously Bill had been here and his name came up, and he's been a coordinator at 6, 7 different places. And then Daryl and I go way back, and both Daryl and Bill are football junkies, and that's kind of what you look for in that position, or that's what we look for.
You mentioned that Mason Rudolph put on some significant size since the end of the season. There may be 2 or 3 guys that have been like real workout warriors since the end of the season that look a little different now.
Jarwin looks different. Mason looks different. Crabtree looks different. Averett looks different. Ogbaugh always looks good. Walter Sheed came in at 208. He's 251 now. Brailford came in at 216. He's 241 now. There are a bunch of them that look that way. they do a good job with them.
Mike, with all the time that JW missed last year, was he able to get a medical red shirt?
You know, you never know on those guys till their eligibility is completed. So that'll keep you from asking you that from now on. That'd be a good question for NCAA and compliance. And if you put that question in now, you may find out next June of 16. Okay, I got to
Do you think there's a chance you'll play that opener on Thursday?
You know, there's been some discussion, and they're still communicating. I think out of their camp, they're saying maybe, but I know that hadn't been solidified here, right? And yeah, and I think they're still going. I mean, I'm not sure what all's going on.
Though you're not too affected or bothered by that if you go.
Oh, Coach and I have talked about it, and quite honestly, we got off on hiring coaches, and then he went to some convention, and then I went to Vegas, and since then we hadn't. I lost so much money, I hadn't got back on track yet. So, all right, guys, thanks.